Very good day, students. So this is a lecture series on the subject Material Science and Metallurgy. So welcome all for this particular lecture series on Material Science and Metallurgy. So this subject we will be discussing about the various characteristics of the materials, which is coming under Material Science, and Metallurgy part will cover the methods by which different metals are formed and different properties of these metals. So material science is a study of material properties, and metallurgy is the study of creating materials, methods involved in creating these materials, and also the process involved in this steps. So the first topic in this particular lecture is mechanism of plastic deformation, slip and twinning. So before getting into plastic deformation, first we will see what is deformation. So deformation is nothing but change in length of the object. If there is an object, for example, imagine you are wearing a rubber band in your hand. You are having a rubber band. So when you stretch the rubber band, what happens? Its length increases. Simultaneously, the diameter of the rubber band will reduce. So this change in length and diameter is generally called as dimension. So change in dimension is nothing but deformation. So there are two types of deformation. As I said, you are stretching the rubber band. So once you, the load which we are applying is called as a tensile load because we are stretching it, pulling. Whenever load is applied and the object is pulled, it is called as tensile load. When you compress a spring, it is called as compressive load. So when you apply tensile load, what happens? The rubber band stretches. And when you release the load, what happens? The rubber band will return to its original shape. Similarly, you can experience the same thing with sheet metal also. When you apply a small amount of load on the sheet metal, it will bend. Once you release your hand, what happens? It will come back to its original shape. So this type of deformation is called as elastic deformation. Here, change in dimension is temporary. Once the load is released, the object will get back to its original shape and size. So that type of deformation is called as elastic deformation. There is another type of deformation which is called as plastic deformation. It is a evolved form of elastic deformation. The same rubber band, when you apply tensile, very high amount of tensile load. Imagine you are applying a high amount of tensile load. That is, you are stretching it beyond its elastic limit. So once you release it, what happens? It will not get back to its original shape. It will be in a somewhat stretched form. So that type of deformation cannot be undone. So here it cannot return to its original shape. And the same case you can say it with the sheet metal also. Once you bend the sheet metal like this and you release it, it will not get back to its original shape. It will be in the bent shape. So that type of deformation is called as plastic deformation. Once, even though the load is released, the object cannot get back to its original shape. So that type of deformation is called as plastic deformation. So two types of deformation we have discussed: elastic deformation and plastic deformation. So that is what we see in this particular slide. So elastic deformation and plastic deformation. So once we get to this, next we will discuss about the materials, various engineering materials available. So ferrous metals, if you take ferrous metals, there is cast iron steel, plain carbon steel, stainless steel, etc. Basically, iron and iron related alloys of iron are called as ferrous metal. So what is alloy? Alloy is a mixture of various elements, homogeneous mixture of various elements. Then you have non-ferrous metals. Whichever metal is not iron or iron related, it is called as non-ferrous metal. Then you have non-metals, graphite, etc. So our entire subject, we will be dealing about these engineering materials only. So various properties of this engineering material will study in the subsequent lecture videos. So getting back to the subject, as I discussed, we'll be dealing with the various properties of the materials. So what are different properties available, we will be discussing. So there are various properties such as elasticity, plasticity, ductility, etc. So those properties we can study using different equipments. For example, the tensile and compressive strength can be studied using the ultimate tensile testing machine. So those type of machines, in order to check the dimensions of the workpiece, you have to use some standards. So those standards are mentioned here, ASTM standards, JAS. These are different standards set by different countries in order to identify the proper mechanism of studying the mechanical properties of these materials. So I hope you understood up to this. So what we discussed in this lecture is what is elastic deformation, what is plastic deformation, and then various standards by which the properties can be studied. I hope you understood this lecture series, lecture video. Thank you, students. We will see you in the next lecture video.